Welcome to Simsbury Town News. My name is Dominique Avery. Have you seen the latest Yankee magazine? It has a piece about Simsbury which talks about how beautiful it is, with gorgeous views and history everywhere, where we dine, shop, eat, and even where we get our Starbucks coffee. Well, that didn't happen by accident, and has been one of the main challenges Simsbury has faced for years: how to grow our town and tax base without losing our history and rural charm. We've been largely successful in the center of town, but not everyone is happy with new development that have changed the view of Talcott Mountain or our historic tobacco fields. But that's enough introduction. I want to welcome my three guests who've come to talk about town planning and economic development. Michael Glidden, who is the Director of Planning and Community Development, our First Selectman, Eric Wellman, and Bob Crowther, Chair of the new Economic Development Commission. Eric, I'm going to start with you because you released some big development news. We're recording this on September 6th, so I think yesterday. I think it was in the Current today, actually. There's big news in the northern end of town. The Big Y project is finally coming to fruition. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means and how it came to be and why it's taken so long?
Yeah, so this is a project that actually Big Y could have broken ground a number of years ago. They had all the approvals that they needed from town and the state, and for various reasons, they didn't move forward. And we recently got word from Big Y that they're going to be moving forward with a concept that I think is a 52,000 square foot store on the north side of town, essentially sort of behind the area where Wagner's is today.
So what was the delay about that? They weren't ready to build, or?
I can't speak for Big Y. I don't know if there's any context that Mike can provide, but I think that my understanding, if you read what was in the Current, is I think that there are more mouths to feed in Simsbury. We're a town, a growing town, and with that growth, Big Y likely saw an opportunity to move forward.
I saw today that there were a lot of complaints on Facebook about why that was coming.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to discuss a little bit how it came to be and what would have happened if Big Y hadn't come.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to put it in the context of the role of the Board of Selectmen and the role of our land use bodies. The Board of Selectmen plays really virtually no role in determining who or what comes to town. Those are decisions that are made by planning and zoning, and really planning and zoning isn't just using their judgment. They're using the plan of conservation and development. They're interpreting our zoning code, and if they deviate from that, they would open the town up to significant lawsuits. So sure, there are judgment calls being made by these boards, but they're really interpreting existing regulations.
So what is the tax difference between an empty property and a thriving supermarket?
Do we have estimates on what we're expecting from that property?
Well, just in general, I don't
Really, it would be night and day. So you're talking about right now, it's vacant commercial land, which is paying like a reduced number. Let's just show a number, like let's say they're paying $10,000 a year in taxes. You put the supermarket there, now it's $200,000 in taxes because of the improvements.
So that's a huge difference and
Correct.
a plus.
And also specific to this property, you need to remember last year, earlier this year, they demolished one of the buildings. So those buildings were generating tax dollars, although they're vacant. They had some sort of improvements on the property. Now those improvements are gone.
So another thing that I think we should point out is that the town cannot control everything about who sells private property, right? That was property that belonged to Wagner.
Yeah. So let me back up. I genuinely appreciated all the comments we received on Facebook and hearing perspectives from our community. But I would say that one of the themes, if I put them into groups, one of the themes is, why isn't it a Trader Joe's? Why isn't it a Whole Foods? And economic development is not like an episode of The Bachelor. It's not like the different supermarket chains line up and we get to pick the one we like. Big Y approached the town with interest to build a supermarket, and we had to consider that proposal on its merits.
So generally, it's a positive thing for our tax base and I'm sure other jobs as well. But there's another thing that's going on in town that's also a positive, a net positive for our tax base, and that is what's been happening with Curaleaf, the medical marijuana production company. It's up till now, it's been located very discreetly behind millwrights, and basically nobody could even tell that it was there. But now it's moving. So, and it's moving to the former Eversource or C&P property. Can you tell us a little bit about how that move came about and what that's going to mean for the town?
So we were approached by the owners of Curaleaf about a year ago, and they were looking to potentially expand the existing facility at Gristmill. That didn't work out, so they were looking for a new location. They started shopping other communities. We were in competition with 3 other communities, and to Mark Greenberg's credit, who is the property owner down at 34 Hop Meadow Street, we kind of married a deal with Mark Greenberg and said, these people are looking for a location for their use. It's allowed in the zoning district, the underlying zoning district for your property. Would you be interested in meeting with them and you know, touring your facility and seeing whether it's a fit? They got together, and it was a match made. They applied for a special permit with the zoning commission, went through a public hearing process. It was approved. The move then was approved by the state, because that's the other thing. What's unique about this use was it's heavily regulated by the Department of Consumer Protection. You know, to the point where, like, for example, for a code official, I have to schedule appointments to go to the site if I had to do an inspection with the state of Connecticut and be approved to access the facility. You know, in my previous life, I worked down in the town of Waterford, and we used to go to Millstone Nuclear Power Plant. I had an easier time going in to the nuclear power plant than I have going into the medical marijuana production facility. I mean, the security there is just amazing. And as for a user, I mean, it generates, there's no need on public services. It doesn't generate school children or anything like a residential development. And we get tax dollars out of it, a lot of tax dollars out of it. Right now, we'd say, if I had to estimate, I think it's just under $200,000 between real estate and personal property that the current facility is generating. This new facility, you know, they're in a building right now that's only 45,000 square feet. This new facility will be 68,000 square feet, and they've put over $10 million worth of investment into this building that they don't own. They leased from Mark Greenberg. So I don't know. Do you want to add anything too?
You know, I'm asked by some people who want to know how I feel about that particular type of business being in our town or being at the gateway to our town. You know, I think about Simsbury's rich history in the tobacco industry, a history which we celebrate, I think rightfully. You know, tobacco is a product that kills people. Cannabis is a product that has the potential to take away pain from people with chronic and terminal illnesses. So I don't have
under the rubric of medical marijuana. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm interested in what that property is actually going to look like, because where it is now, it's on a street that nobody ever drives on, and it's behind chain link fences, and the Eversource property is much more open. So how is that going? Have you seen sort of specs? So
there'll be limited changes. The few changes you may see some of the overhead AC units that are going in, or a generator. This facility has to generate. They have significant power, and they have to generate enough power so that if we lose power here in Simsbury, that nothing will be lost there.
But the Eversource building, where it is now,
nothing's
going to
really
change. So you won't notice anything. The chain link fence will be in the back.
Yeah.
So it's not the only thing that's on the Eversource property. There's also a residential development right on Hop Meadow, and I think it's called Espen Glen.
Espen Green.
Espen Green. Mm-hmm. Not everybody loves that. So, and people are concerned about the views, and So I'm sure you had nothing to do with them. That was zoning that approved it, right?
That's correct. The zoning commission approved that. It was approved associated with a planned area development and master plan back in 2014 into 2015.
But that is right next to this marijuana facility. So how, is there going to be a separation there, or?
So the Curaleaf, in one of their requirements with the state of Connecticut and Department of Consumer Protection, they have to develop a robust security plan. And basically, you know, here's our area versus the public area. So, for example, there's fencing that exists right now because this used to be a utility yard. That rear area, the fence very likely will be closed. You know, you'll have limited access. There'll probably be security guards that would say if someone wanders over to this that you're not supposed to be here. You have to leave. Kind of, you know, similar to what occurs right now up on Grist Mill, although no one, like you said, it's in the back.
I told the story once. I went to take pictures, and I got as far as the fence, and I wasn't there 2 minutes before a security guard came to want to know exactly what I was doing there. So we've been talking about some people being upset. Another thing that people have been upset about is the solar farm that's being constructed right now on Hoskins and county roads. And I wanted to give you a chance to explain a little bit how that came about. I know people have complained in public hearings, but we talk a little bit about how little control Simsbury had there.
Yeah, the way large energy projects are happen is that they don't go through local approval in the way other things do. They go to the Connecticut Siting Council, and the thought there is that large energy projects would likely never happen if they were under the auspices of local control. So personally, I understand why it exists that way, but it doesn't make it any easier to stomach. Having said that, the Board of Selectmen worked really hard, in collaboration with staff and Mike's department to make sure that this project was going to be done as good as it could possibly be done, with appropriate screening, making sure that wells in the area were being tested, that there would be water runoff plans, and all of those things would be in place. So we spent the better part of a year litigating that until it got to a place where we felt like this project could be done well.
Eric's correct.
So I actually went up there the other day to see. I live on the other end of town, and it took me a minute to find it because there is some screening. But it's really underway. I mean, have you been up lately? I mean,
it is. I have been up there. Yeah. We're talking about 100,000 solar panels-ish. Very significant project, but I think one of the things I found really gratifying is that if you just drive up County Road and you're not thinking about it, you really don't see it.
Well, that's what happened to me. It took me a while to find it.
And you think of it, the screening improvements haven't been installed yet. The vegetated berm and other things that will be going in along County and Hoskins.
Now, is there a tax advantage to us?
Yeah, so I'm asked a lot, well, we don't get any of the energy, so why, what's in it for us? It's tax dollars. They're going to be paying over the life of the project, on average, about $600,000 a year. It starts at over $1 million, but over time, solar panels depreciate and it becomes lower. But when the project's up and running this winter, they're going to be one of Simsbury's largest taxpayers.
Well, and that's good news.
Think of it, actually, from an energy perspective, we do benefit because they're generating power that's going to the grid. That's right. I mean, so we are, I don't live in town, but I'm benefiting from it because there's more green energy that's being produced. So it's more of an energy credit is what we don't benefit from, and that's what went to the Massachusetts utility. But like I said, we're putting more energy back into the grid.
So moving on, among the photos that our viewers may have seen in the introduction to this show was an image of the Ridge Italian Mountain Apartments, which is, the way I understand it, the site of part of the old Hartford insurance company site. Michael and maybe Eric, what did it mean to the town in terms of the first thing I want to talk about is what it meant to the town when the Hartford left? What kind of a tax blow was that?
Yeah, I think it's a very significant blow. My understanding, it was about $1.5 million a year when the Hartford left. And I probably have gotten more complaints from residents about that particular development that's coming up because of the way it looks, specifically how close it is to the road. And, I think hindsight is 20/20. But I think at the time there was a lot of panic when the Hartford left, and how are we going to replace that revenue? And I think in retrospect, we may have given away too much.
Yeah, it really is very close to the road. They have put some trees there now. I noticed the other day. So I'm sure that when there is some greenery there, that it will look less harsh. It looks very harsh right now, and it's sort of a shock to long-time people. And it really has changed the view that you used to be able to see. Bob, I'm sorry to have been ignoring
Well,
you.
I was just going to comment, being a former employee of the Hartford and having been on the other side and understanding all the tax ramifications, but also being a resident of Simsbury, I had that major concern. But as you see all the development that's going on, one of the questions I've asked of Mike is, if you look at the grand list, when the Hartford was here, the Hartford left, now you look at all the development going on, where are we relative to the grand list? And my understanding is we've recouped well over that $1.5 million. So yes, that was a huge hole to fill, but we've more than compensated for that. So I view all this development as a net positive from the standpoint of, hey, that was a huge blow to the town. We've since come back and exceeded it. And there's an old saying, either continue to grow or you die. And so we are growing, which to me is very, very positive. And I feel much more stronger, more bullish about the town than I did at the time the Hartford was leaving.
That's actually, I think, the headline from this show. I didn't know that we have recouped what we lost, or just about. I mean, that's really good news, because when the Hartford up and left, that was terrible news. And I think another thing that's happening to people is that the Hartford itself was so discreetly placed on that lot that you didn't know it was there. And so nobody wanted that building, and we really didn't have a lot of choice. Yeah.
And it's important to remember that when the Hartford came, there was a lot of opposition at that time.
I was just doing some research. 3,000 people came to the town meeting to discuss it. There were a lot of people who were for it.
Yeah.
But there were 3,000 people, according to the New York Times article, who showed up at a town meeting when the Hartford came here. And some were for and some were against. Anyway, I don't think we've ever seen
Amazing.
in recent times 3,000 people in a meeting. Bob, let me go back to you you're the head of the new Economic Development Commission, and I wanted to ask a little bit about what you're working on from a strategic standpoint right now.
So it's interesting because we were asked, people volunteered for the new Economic Development Commission, and we have a group of 7 people, of which none of us have any background whatsoever in economic development. So, what have we been asked to do? If you look at economic development as a concept, if you will, there are a number of different organizations and commissions here in town that touch economic development. There is no one entity that really owns it. What we've really been asked to do is to work with those various groups and try to improve how they work together as a team, if you will, to try to make economic development more efficient, make it much more effective, to communicate with the different groups to make sure that, when we look at things like the zoning process and the application process and what does someone have to do to get approvals, if you will, that we're making that as efficient as we possibly can. When we look at different business incentives for the town, what should our policies be? As we think about marketing the town, what can we do to make it much more effective to draw more people into the town? And how do we take advantage of all of the wonderful things we have going on here in Simsbury to help make the town richer and much more enjoyable for all? So we're kind of working behind the scenes, if you will, to working on those areas of business incentives, of marketing, of business outreach and recruitment, reaching out to the business owners to get input from them on a constant basis, to constantly get feedback and look for ways we can make the town from an economic development perspective better. That's really what we're trying to do.
Sounds good. Eric and Michael, there is another project that's maybe on the front burner now, and that has a lot of people upset, and that's the 80 Climax Road one, right? And recently I saw a question on Facebook where somebody said they heard a rumor that 19 houses were being built on one property. And I wanted you to sort of update folks about how we got there and what there's a lawsuit involved, and can you explain what's going on there?
So that's a result of an application that went before the Planning Commission pursuant to 830G of the General State Statutes. So what 830G is it's the Affordable Housing Appeal process. So if you're a community that 10% of your housing stock is not considered affordable housing as defined by statute, it opens yourself up to applications where local regulations are kind of similar to the solar farm application. Local regs are overridden, and a developer can write their own regs, density, etc., to basically promote the construction of more affordable housing units in your town. It's in a parcel. It's 4.5 acres. There's 19 homes served by public road that is served by public water and public sewer. The Planning Commission actually denied that back in 2017. And it was in the court system for about a year, or actually closer to 18 months. And the Planning Commission's denial was overturned. And it was remanded back to the Planning Commission to review very specifically drainage that was associated with their denial. They had 10 reasons why they denied. The court sustained three of them and said, well, the applicant deserves a fair shot. They have the right to come back and address those issues. When it comes to applications made pursuant to 830G, really the bar is very high for a community to say no. It comes down to life safety, it comes down to utilities, it comes down to drainage that would cause a life safety issue. In the case of Climax Road, that bar was not met. So therefore, the courts overturned. The Planning Commission ultimately approved the application, but like I said, that was at kind of the direction of the court. So that's a live application, which staff has been meeting with the developer. They're looking to start utility work associated with that in the next 30 days.
Yeah, so I went by the other day, and there's signs of the trees that they're taking
Correct.
down, and or that are ready to be taken down. Yeah, I mean, the requirements were written because towns like ours were denying people the right to have a little bit denser housing, which was sort of creating a sort of segregated community, or economically segregated community. Eric, did you want to add something?
Just, I think having affordable housing in our community or any community is vitally important. But when I think about density of housing, be it apartments or condos, I think about where it's located. Is it near a walkable downtown? Is it near our bike paths and public transportation? And in my mind, that's always been a more appropriate place.
We're actually going to run out of time. We have so much to talk about. We're not going to get to everything. But we've also had some good tax news or economic development news from Ensign Bickford.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a
so
little
Ensign
bit?
Bickford, we're pleased to share, is investing $10 million in its Simsbury campus as part of a center of excellence for aerospace manufacturing and design. And in the process, they have said that they're going to be hiring 140 people. And based on their experience with their employees, we anticipate about a third of those employees would live in Simsbury. So very excited about that, and obviously a large and long-time employer, and it just means that they're going to be here for yet another generation.
And that's really good news. There are two things that are sort of languishing, and we're going to run out of time. One is Handy Supermarket, and the other is Gibbs Mobile. Anything on that front?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
The town was working with the Andrea family, actually developing a concept to show what can be built pursuant to the charrette. Right now we've kind of came up with an idea. The family's been reviewing it. They've been courting developers, so there's been interest, but nothing of significance to report. And as for Gibbs Mobile, I mean, my office has seen several individuals come in to potentially reopen the station or open something different. It's just, that gets back to your comment about private property in the market. Unfortunately, we can't control that sometimes.
Unfortunately, this has been fascinating. I should have made you come for an hour. I've gotten the signal that I have to wrap up. So I want to thank my guests, Michael Glidden, Eric Wellman, and Bob Crowther, and of course our station manager and director Karen Anvil, who is handling this whole show all on her own. And I want to thank you for watching. I want to remind you, however, that SCTV provides an incredible service to the town by televising town government meetings, but it does it on a shoestring and depends on volunteers. And right now, it especially needs volunteers to record town board and town commission meetings on the remote cameras in Town Hall. If you have questions or you want to apply, you can contact Karen at 860-658-1720 or by email karen@simsburytv.org. That's it for today. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for Simsbury Town News.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.